the Grandmaster at Rose Quartz Mediumship podcast, where we simply adore, listen, and everything healing and metaphysical.
The other day, my husband was getting ready to leave the house, and he had a kind of tight schedule. He had a bunch of things that needed to happen. There were a bunch of moving parts. And I was sitting in our kitchen working. And he asked me if for me that was literally just about me. He was offering this for me. And I paused, and he paused, and he had been getting ready to walk out the door to go accomplish some things. And so he had been walking out the door, and so he was facing sideways. And I had paused, and I was thinking about everything that he had going on that day, and if it was selfish or self-centered to say yes to the And so I just sat there pausing for a second, and his body was facing sideways away from me. And because I paused, he paused. And then he turned his whole body and faced me. So instead of being on an angle, he faced me and then offered again. And it was so easy for me to say yes. It was so easy. And while I know my husband loves to support me and do things for me, this was truly about me. And when he turned and faced me, it felt different to me. And later that day, we were having a discussion about how our days went, which is fairly commonplace in our relationship. And I said, hey, I want to follow up on this morning when you had offered to do it. And I said, do you know what made me say yes? And he said, yes, I do. It's because I turned and faced you. And I said, yeah. It felt totally different to me. And he said, I know. I realized I was 1 foot in and 1 foot out. I had offered to do this for you, but I wasn't fully in. I was facing my body away from you. And I was moving in the opposite direction while asking if you wanted me to move towards you. And for me, it was just so amazing to see him process somatics and everything that we have been embodying and learning and using around somatics in such a real life example. He said to me that he recognized that his body posture was not communicating what he wanted it to communicate. That there was nonverbal communication there that was telling me that he was half in and half out. And when he saw it inside of himself, he had reflected about it. And he had said, I'm all in. I'm all in on this offer. It's not a superficial offer. It's not a casual offer. I'm not offering just so that I can feel good that I offered. I mean it. And when his body matched his words, when those two things were congruent, it was so easy for me to say yes. And while this seems like a small example, I think it's huge. as we move through this human experience, so many of us are incongruent. We're saying one thing and doing another. We're saying one thing and our body posture is saying another. If I tell you that I want to hear about your day and then I'm scrolling on my phone, that's incongruent. I'm not listening to how your day went. If I'm offering to support you while not looking at you, while facing the opposite direction, while walking away from you, then I'm not offering. I'm not asking. I'm not being present with you. My energy is on me versus my energy being on you. I'm not being present. Not with you anyways. I'm being present with the thoughts in my mind. Most of the time, the thoughts in our mind are either in the past or the future. Presence happens when we're in our body. And when our body is congruent with our messages that are coming out of our mouth, things are really crystal clear for the people who we are talking to. When my husband turned and faced me, there was congruency there. His body was matching his words. And it became really, really easy and simple for me to answer him. Incongruency is really dysregulating and really confusing. If I'm telling you about how my day was really hard, but I'm smiling at you. Yeah, it was a horrible day, but it's okay. That's incongruent. And now you have to spend your time and energy figuring out if my day was really that bad. Because my words are saying that my day was really bad, but my body posture is telling you that I'm happy. That incongruency is a waste of your friends and families and loved ones' time. They have to spend their energy figuring out what you mean. But when our body posture is congruent with what we are saying, I don't have to spend any time and energy figuring out what you mean. Because it's really clear. It's really congruent. Whether I like what you're saying or not is another thing. But I don't have to spend my energy, my mental bandwidth, trying to figure out what you mean. Because your words are matching your body posture. And I feel that your energy is out with me rather than in with you. And again, this example might seem really small, but we do it 1,000,000 times a day. As we move through this life, this human experience, we are either present and congruent with the experience that we are having, or we are not present. We are incongruent. And then our loved ones need to figure out and spend their energy and their time and their mental bandwidth figuring out what on earth we mean. And then we place our loved ones in a situation where they are at risk to create a story in their mind that doesn't match what we meant. And if we are just congruent, if we are present and we are congruent, then we do not risk our loved ones misinterpreting or creating a story that is different than what we meant. And it is just one of the reasons that I have such a deep love for somatics. When you understand how to work with the 5 channels that are used in the somatic world, when you really understand, your life is going to be so much easier and more simple. and more joyful. And the same for your loved ones, because they're not going to spend their time and energy and bandwidth trying to figure out what you mean. They'll know. And if you really think about how much of our time and energy and bandwidth are used trying to figure out what somebody else means because they're incongruent, you're going to have your mind blown. It's so energy consuming. It is so time consuming. It is so consuming of our mental bandwidth. Saying what you mean is just one thing. But saying what you mean with your body is another thing. It's another layer of that onion. And when you give that gift to yourself and to your loved ones, your reality is going to change. You're going to feel different to people. You're going to feel different to yourself. And your life is going to flow differently. And so, if you have one foot in and one foot out, and you're facing the opposite direction while talking about your life, I'm just going to invite you to turn and face it and be really clear with the life that you want to live, with the way that you want to move through the world, and the messages that you want to be sending to the people who are in your reality. We so appreciate you being here with us at Rose Quartz Mediumship Podcast, and I hope that you have a beautiful morning, day, evening, or night, wherever it is that this finds you.